that's why we stopped taking Oxos into the bedroom, Dan.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, morning, Peter Pod, of course.
Good morning, all.
Are we ready?
We're right.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to Gardening with Peas in a Pod. So we're going to get a bit sciencey with you all, so please don't turn off in your droves, and I'll go into more. We're just here at Greenhouse. It's 2nd of October, and it's a belting day, isn't it, Dan?
It is. It looks pretty cold, but when you get in that sun, it's...
I mean, we've had some rain as well, which is a bonus, because it's been a long time coming. And we had a fair bit of rain yesterday. It's put a bit in barrel, so it's all good. Only thing is now, it's time of year, if it rains now and it's still not cold, we're going to be weeding, which could do without at this time of year, but there you go. But it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt to have a few weeds.
No.
So. Right, so we're going to have a look at soils, Dan, which is... it's the cornerstone, really, of everything we do. It's not only in gardening, but in, it's a big backbone to life on Earth, really. It supports a lot of life. If you can master soil management, no matter what you're wanting to grow, you're 99.9% on the right direction if you can get your head around soil. So I know a lot of people might, soil science, muck, dirt, the words it gets. But it's, to me, gardening and soils and soil management, soil science is pretty much like that kid who picks guitar up and he wants to play like Jimi Hendrix before he learns chords. To me, chords are gardening, if this makes sense to you, is learning about soil. You get your soil right, you've cracked it basically. It conquers so many things, problems with watering, problems with pests, problems with disease, stunted growth with plants, things not being quite right. Yeah. Getting soil right is the way forward.
That's the key.
And there's a way to do it. So soil. I've got a bit here, just been and got it off my garden. Like I say, it's really derogatory when people call it dirt, muck, mud. Do you know how much life I've got in my hand there, Dan?
It's probably thousands.
It's more than that. There's over 100 billion different life forms in my hand.
Jeez.
With fungi, bacteria, organic matters, creatures, plants.
Yeah.
All them are in there. So it just really does show you.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's right. So I've got a few notes because, like I say, it's a massive subject. I'm not going to cover everything today. We're going to do this as like a little mini series, I reckon. Yeah. Over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Take you through all different aspects, what soil's made up of, and all, like I say, everything needs to do with it, really. From my perspective, I'm not a professor in soil science, but we've learnt a bit of it years. So all right then, soil. I'll ask you a question, Dan. Do plants need soil?
No,
they don't. The only real thing that soil does to plants, same as any other growing media, is stops them falling over. Yeah. But it's also vital. But it's not so much the soil, it's the spaces in between that are vital. Yeah. So before we go really any further, what's the origins of soil then? Where does soil come from?
I won't have a clue.
Yeah. We didn't wake up one morning and we got loads of topsoil and everything.
No.
Well, it's slightly not horticultural, it's more ecological. Yeah. And the first plants, which were called the pioneers, basically is stuff come out of the sea. Yeah. Life come out of the sea. It's your grasses, mosses, sedges that grew in sandbanks and dunes, which are still there today. Yeah. So that's the first part. So it's actually soils produced by plants. So it's that circle and cycle again. It's already started. So as they put the roots down and then they died off, they're feeding then that sand, they're putting nutrients in, they're making it into a humus, more a soil. And as that grew, then you got secondary plants, which are coming further inland. Yeah, and they're doing the same cycle, but on a bigger scale, till eventually you get to what they call a climax community. And that's where you've got woody plants, such as trees, shrubs, all different types of plants growing together. And they all have their own like little niche. Yeah. This is an habitat, but they'll have a niche in an habitat. What do I mean by that? Is the plants that probably need more sun or prefer more sun was growing on the edges of those habitats, those woodlands, if you like, call it a woodland. And that's basically, over the process of a couple of weeks, stroke a couple of million years, you know, that is our actual soil structure. Among some other elements, because you've got mineralisation, you know, the breakdown of rocks, erosion, things like that, all add to it. So that's really what we call soil in a very basic terminology has come about. Yeah. So that's more or less the origins, and of course, right, so what is soil made up of? Well, it's a living, breathing, functioning thing. It's made up of lots of different elements. So there's organic matter in it, which happens naturally. Whether as a gardener we put it in or not, it will be there.
Yeah.
It's decay. Some organic matter, what's in soil, is dead. Some in it's still living. You've got your bacteria, which is billions of bacteria. You've got fungi, which we will come back to, because there's certain groups of plants which prefer a bacterial soil, which is heavy in bacterial, and there's certain plants prefer a fungal soil, which is heavy in fungal. So touch on that, something you'll know, Dan, is mycorrhiza.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes into it as well, as we get further down the line. So yeah, there's all sorts of different life forms in there. Then obviously there's your plant life with your roots, you know, what are dead and alive roots, you know. And there's all your different soil dwelling animals, etc., earthworms, nematodes, all that sort of thing that all become part of the cycle. Yeah. So like I say, it is a cycle. It's a web. It's something that's surviving on its own, and it's self-replicating. It's its own life form. Let's put it that way. So that's quite sciencey. That's a bit of that. So getting back down to more like for us with allotments and stuff. What soil types are there? Well, there's 3 soil types. There's sand, there's silt, and there's clay. That's it. You can all bang on your comments and that at bottom now about, oh, how about humus, and how about loam, and how about this, that, and other. I'll pick up on that.
Yeah.
They are part of soil, but they're not a soil type. So you've got 3 soil types, like I say, sand, silt, and clay. Now, size-wise, clay is the smallest. Yep.
Yeah.
Silt is your middle one, and sand is your largest particle. So sand is the largest particle soil.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you define them, one of the simplest methods is by texture, because we'll talk about soil structure and soil texture. So a sandy soil feels gritty. Obviously, it's sandy. You know, you feel that grit, that texture to it.
Yeah.
Your clay soil is very sort of shiny, you know, and it'll ball up on you, and it'll smear. I think smear's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Silty soils, which you're not going to see a lot of in UK, sort of. Definitely not total silty soil anyway. They're more a soapy texture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's your 3 soil types. Now, to take each one individually and collectively, so we'll start with clay. Yeah. You don't get a clay soil. You don't get a sandy soil. You don't get a silty soil. Very, very extremes that you get them. What you get is a mixture of the 3. And a clay soil is one that's more dominant with clay than it is with sand or silt. Yeah. Now, clay soils, everybody sort of like head in hands if you get clay soil. Don't learn about clay soils, because clay soil is the best soil for growing in horticulture you can have.
Yeah.
It's how you manage that. The problems with clay is it's a cold soil. So in winter it stops colder. So to bring that in retrospectively to how we garden, because we're on a very, very clayey soil. My daffodils are planted.
Yeah.
My winter onions what I planted, I've put them in earlier.
Yeah.
So they've got that warmth still to give them that chance to get going, to grow. So straight away, by knowing you've got a clay soil, and I've just said it stops colder because of its nature in winter, it links back to your growing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It says to you pick up on that, plant a bit earlier where I can.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be slower to warm up.
Yeah.
In the spring as well. So that's where mulching comes, you know, to preserve the warmth in it. Yeah. Clay soil, because of its nature as well, is more due to compaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
But because of its nature, because it's the size of a particle it is, it's also the best for holding nutrients. You know, so it's the most fertile soil you can have. Because sand's so open, it's a lot more free draining and a lot more bigger spaces between the pores, you know, between the crumb, that you'll lose your nutrients a lot quicker. It won't hold your nitrogen, phosphates and what have you, like a clay soil will. So that's a massive benefit to clay soils.
Mm.
So, yeah, just to show you, before we move on then, very, very simple way. What should a soil look like? You know, you see, you've probably seen these pictures on different programs where they show you a soil horizon.
Yeah.
And you get different colours where your subsoil, your topsoils, your bedrocks are. But a good soil, if you could break it down, if you get me under a microscope, should look like that. That is what you want from your soil to look like. That is what a good soil will look like. All the different beds, crumbs of soil, and the big, 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 big important thing about this is gaps in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's where your soil water goes. That's where your plant's roots go. That's where your nutrients are. And above anything else, that's where your oxygen is. Yeah. That's where your carbon dioxide is. Your CO2. So that is, bear in mind, whenever you know, that's what you're after creating. That is your
structure. Your
soil structure. That is what you want, yeah. That's how you get that, is by adding your organic matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you want. So, yeah, so you've got 3 soil types to bear in mind. You've got sand, silt and clay. Like I said, typically where we're gardening, it's mainly clay soils.
Yeah.
So don't be put off with clay soils. The way to manage them, if you've got, there's a thing that like brings everything together with them. If you've got sand, silt or clay soil, the thing that improves them is organic matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, you add organic matter and you start improving your soil. Why do you start improving your soil with organic matter?
Sorry, you're asking me a question.
Gone into teaching mode.
Yeah, like why?
Yeah.
Well, the only reason I can think is we're just fetching more microbacterial in.
Exactly, Dan. Yeah, yeah. So, right, perhaps a word of caution though. Right, it's the old carbon cycle and all that, which you can look up elsewhere, and you can go wrong by adding manure. Sorry, I shouldn't say manure. Organic matter. Perhaps manure, I'll go back on that. That is one thing. What you don't want to do is to take more out of the soil to break down the organic matter than what you're putting in.
Yeah.
So if you're using manures, it never wants to be fresh manure because of the carbon ammonia contents on it.
Yeah.
It needs to be rotted down well first. And I would say the same with such as grass cuttings. It's always best to compost first, then add to your soil, even with leaf mould. Because if you put it on fresh, you know, like a lot of gardeners don't seem to have patience to wait that 18 months, a year, 2 years, then it's detrimental then. You're taking the effort out of your soil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same if you go too gung-ho, you can put too much organic matter into your soil. We can open it up and, you know, open it up too much. You know, it's all about management and creating them beds. And organic matter, basically anything that was once alive is organic matter.
Yeah.
You know, so straight, I know you mentioned organic matter and there'll be people who are thinking, well, I ain't got stables near me, I can't get manure. It's not. It's, you know, your kitchen waste. You know, not meat. Because meat, you know, it wants to be plant-based. I think that's a way of saying it, isn't it? As much as you can. Yeah. So all your kitchen waste, as you know, I've gone to grass paths. So I've basically created a load of organic matter for myself there, plus, which we'll come to at another point, fertiliser.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that circle again. It's that cycle. Your garden, as in nature, nobody goes in and starts mulching trees in a woodland with manure or organic matter because plants feed themselves. Deciduous trees drop the leaves, they're breaking down, they're going into the soil, they're feeding the decomposers, you know, which then are feeding the bacterias, which are feeding the worms, because it's a cycle, it's a jungle, you know, everything's eating one another. That's bringing the nutrients back. The roots are making these air pockets, which is vital. Oxygen in your soil, all those gaps between those beads in their beds is oxygen. Because throw fertilizers at your soil, you'll feed your plants, you'll not feed your soil. And then you'll start getting fertilizer sick. You're killing your soil. You know, it's showed now.
Yeah.
I was looking at some pictures of farming land, what's intense fertilizers with big gaps in fields where crops ain't come. Yeah. It's because you need that oxygen. You need those carbons in. Yeah. You need it to be self-fertile, your soil. Once your soil's self-fertile, you've cracked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going into it. I didn't want to go too deep, too straight away, because it's a big one, isn't it? That's why we're going to split it. So yeah, so what relevance does all this have to us? Well, if we go back on soil structure, I'll split it. We talk about soil structure, talk about soil texture. Structure is this: are the components are related and sit with each other? Yep. So the makeup of your soil.
Yeah. You
can change your structure. That is something that we can do. We can improve the structure. Again, physically, mechanically, adding organic matter can improve your structure. What you can't alter is your texture. Yeah. And I've had lots of arguments in the past about this.
Yeah.
If you've got a clay soil, and you say, all right, I've got a clay soil. What I'll do is I'll fetch 30 tons of grit sand, soft sand, tip it on, put it in with a plough. I've got a sandy soil. No, you haven't. You've got a very sandy clay soil.
Yeah.
You know, you'll give it time. It's a clay. If you've got clay, you've got clay. So that's how texture relates to structure.
Yeah.
You see, so they also is important. So yeah. So plant-wise then, plants actually getting nutrients, getting the feed they need from soil. Well, again, all that all comes about with the gaps in between the soil. That's where the soil water, where the nutrients will be. That's down to all the animals that are feeding and living, the bacteria, the fungi, of that initial organic matter. As they break down, they're releasing nutrients, you know.
Yeah.
As they poop, they're releasing nutrients. And that's all that goes into the soil. And the more organic matter in a managed way you put into your soil, the better it will get. I'm not going to go much further, but I'll just say, so the vital things for your soil, which I think is pretty obvious now, is that organic matter. Yeah. Soil structure. Just come to me then. I mention it. There's a lot about no dig now. Minimal cultivation, digging. Is what's linked to soil structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what happens, again, example then. Right, you've got a rotavator. Yeah. It'll go to a certain depth. So that's your top of your soil, your rotavator will go to there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all you're doing, if you rotivate twice a year, you're rotavating that section of soil there, you're not touching that.
Yeah.
Now what happens there is that creates what we call a soil pan.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where you get flooding. Yeah.
Right.
You're not draining below that level.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. If you're non-cultivational, you're not using mechanical, then you're getting all that volume because you're never creating that soil pan. Yeah. You're breaking it up in other ways. So it's about the more depth you get of what we often call topsoil, the better your soil will be, the better drainage you'll get.
Yeah.
But when you think this is like one of the most valuable commodities we've got on earth, and what do we do with it now most of the time? We put block paving over it. Yeah. We slab over it. You know, we're going away from grass because it's, we don't want to water grass in summer.
Everyone just wants something so easy, don't they?
Yeah, and it's 1,000 pities in a way. Because this is your lifeblood, this is your backbone. And it's all about that. So yeah, so just to go back over it then. So basically, I'll just give you a quick introduction, a layman's introduction to soil and its origins. Mentioned the three types. So we've got clay, silt and sand. The importance of organic matter, which we briefly touched on, but we'll go into in more depth. And obviously, the main objective is as much oxygen in that soil as possible.
Yeah.
Aerobic, which means oxygenated, as opposed if you start getting compact cells, then they're anaerobic.
Yeah.
They're becoming lifeless, which you don't want. Because there's 100 billion different forms of life in there, which you can easily kill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next chapter, Dan, we'll look at, that's a basic introduction. Then what I want to do is go into it more depth for us as gardeners and what it means to us. So we'll look at actual watering, water tables, pH, which a lot of people have a few varying problems with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, we'll cover that over the next few weeks. Hopefully some people will find it interesting. So if you still want one of them gardeners who'll plant 30 sprouts and be happy to get an handful off, then, you know, that's your merry way. But I'll show you how to try and get a full crop of sprouts.
Yeah.
You know, instead of that, we'll improve. Because that's what it's all about, end of the day. The more notice you take of this, the outcome is for you.
Yeah.
The better your plants will be. The less money you'll be spending. The less water you'll be using in summer.
Yeah.
You know, it is the most, I might not be the greatest person to put it across in words, but it is the most relevant thing, the most important thing in horticulture that you can learn, really, or you can try and understand.
Yeah.
There's millions of books out there to go and have a look at as well, you know. So, yeah. So, like I said, next week, Dan, we'll have a look at pH. So that's pretty important, the pH scale. We'll have a look at soil water, and we'll go more in depth into the actual creatures, if you like, the sort of carbon cycle that's in the soil. Yeah. Yeah, anything to add, Dan?
No, don't think so.
Sound? Your knees hurting?
My arms are.
So I know it's a bit waffly. So if you've watched till the end, thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to watch these in sequence as well, which is always a good idea with something like this, you just click on subscribe. It don't cost you out, and then you'll be watching them in sequence. You're not going to go in at episode 3 and
I'll
get
set
a bit
the
confused.
playlist up as well for this. Obviously, we're going over 3 or 4, so then it'll drop them in series.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll look at getting something done on this Facebook group, some sort of PDF or something for it.
Yeah.
So you can take some notes away for that.
Yeah.
So give us a like, and we'll see you all next week, hopefully.
Yeah. Cheers.